Hello everybody. Through the years I have documented several trips to Big Bend and Arkansas and other places, Colorado, but I discovered that I had not documented on video, on a digital DVD, our trip to Big Bend in 1987 with Bobby and Luke Gillum, Bill and Kevin Golson, Nathan and Cecil Self. Did not have a movie camera at that time, but I did have a 35 millimeter, and Nathan and I took almost 90 pictures that turned out pretty good, and so I wanted to put them on a DVD and do a little bit of narration to explain some of the places we are and the things we're seeing and the fun we're having. Unfortunately, we had a little 110 camera and took about dozen or two or three dozen pictures, and none of them turned out on that little 110 camera, but the 35 millimeters turned out fairly well. Anyway, this is about our trip in 1987 to Big Bend. This is a scene of a booklet and the sun rising over the Chisos Mountains and the Rio Grande River in the foreground. Going to call this our fathers and sons Big Bend trip, bike trip. It was in March of 1987 during the boys' spring break. We rode our motorcycles to Big Bend, left out on a Saturday, and I and Nathan made it back to Waco Tuesday afternoon, but Bobby and Bill and the boys stretched it out a little longer, wound up going all the way to Mustang Island on Padre Island area, Corpus Christi area, and didn't get back in till Friday, I think. So anyway, the riders were Bobby and Luke Gillum, Bill and Kevin Golson, Cecil and Nathan Self. I'm going to try to give you an idea of the route we took. We started from Waco, met up at the Whataburger over on the west side of town on Loop 340, Highway 84, about 6:30 or so, and then we rode west on 84 through Gatesville, Evant, Goldthwaite, stopped and ate breakfast at Goldthwaite, and then went on down Highway 16 to San Saba and went west out to Brady, followed 190 out to Menard, El Dorado, Ira Ann, stopped and ate lunch at Scenic Overlook Roadside Park west of Ira Ann, and went on down and caught I-10, rode Interstate 10 all the way out to Fort Stockton, stopped and got some light bulbs and stuff there, went on out to Balmorhea, stopped for a little snack, and then checked out the creek there and stuff coming through town. That was spring water flowing out of Lake Balmorhea, or the Balmorhea State Park there. Then we rode Highway 17 on up into the mountains to Fort Davis, and went to the Fort Davis State Park there and camped out, spent the night there. Took a lot of pictures there. The next day we rode up to up Highway 118 up to McDonald Observatory and toured that area. Then we rode on out towards Kent a little ways to the Y there of 166, 118, and took the loop back to Fort Davis coming around this way. And then we caught Highway 17 again going on down, and that's also runs into Highway 67 there at Marfa. We stopped at Marfa and ate lunch at the city park. Then we rode Highway 67 on down to Presidio, and then caught the River Road, which is Farm to Market or Ranch Road 170, down to Terlingua, Lajitas, Terlingua, Studi Butte, and then we went up to the Chisos Mountains there, right where the Big Bend National Park sign is, and camped out there up in the basin elevation, 6,000 or 7,000 feet elevation there. And then the next day we rode back down to the headquarters there at the intersection there in the highway called Panther Junction. Rode down to Boquillas Canyon, Rio Grande Village area, and we went across on little flat bottom boats or ferries, boats, John boats, whatever you want to call them, to the town of Boquillas del Carmen in Mexico there, and had lunch over there. It was a sort of strange, we all ordered different things in different quantities. We all got soda water to drink, and everybody's bill came to exactly $3.50. I think everything was $3.50. And then we came back across the river, went down to Boquillas Canyon, and walked down there to the sand dune, and checked out the river there. Then late that afternoon, which was Monday afternoon, we rode back up to Big Bend headquarters, on back up to the Chisos Mountains. Nathan and I packed up our gear, and we hightailed it back out of the park up 385 to Marathon, over to Sanderson on 90 to Dryden. Stopped and picked up some stuff to make some foil burgers. Stopped by Langtree to see Judge Roy Bean, but he wasn't there anymore. So went on down to and camped out at the Seminole Canyon State Park there. The next day, which was Tuesday, it was sort of woke up sort of drizzly rain, cold. We rode on down to Del Rio, ate breakfast, went out to Bracketville on Highway 90 still, and then Nathan and I went north on Ranch Road 674, which is a very scenic road that follows the West Nueces River. A lot of elevation changes and curves and pretty scenery. Rode up to Rock Springs, caught 377 there, and followed it down along the Llano River to Junction, ate lunch at Junction, and it was a little chilly and threatening rain, so we wound up putting on our rain suits, came on up to Mason, caught 29 over to Llano, to Burnett, caught 281 up to Lampasas, and 580 back over to Gatesville, and came on back into McGregor and China Spring. Got home about 4 o'clock. Bill and Bobby and them had off the whole week, so they didn't leave Big Bend until Tuesday morning, but it was cold and rainy when they did that, and so they were planning to go to Padre Island, so they headed down to Eagle Pass, and I think maybe spent the night there. And it looked like the weather forecast was going to be rainy, so they somehow or another, I don't know exactly the route they took, but they wound up at Inks Lake State Park up by Burnett, and for the next night. And the weather looked like it was going to clear off, so they wound up going to San Antonio and on down to Aransas Pass or Port Aransas, and spent the night camped out on the beach, I believe, at Mustang Island. And then the next day or two, they came on back maybe through San Antonio and back up to Waco. And they got home Friday, I think, Friday afternoon. Anyway, that's sort of a brief recap of our trip. Hope you enjoy the pictures and the narration. These are the still pictures that Nathan and I took with the 35 millimeter. As I mentioned earlier, we had problems with our little 110 camera, and none of the 2 or 3 dozen pictures that we had taken on the way down to Fort Davis came out, so the first pictures pick up while we are at Fort Davis State Park. This was Saturday afternoon, probably about 6 o'clock or so. We had driven 500 miles that day, and it was still a little bit daylight, so the boys had been trapped on the back of the bikes nearly all day, so they were feeling a little adventurous, and there was this mountainside there, so they took off on this trail climbing up to the top of the mountain. and they got up to the top, and they were hollering down at us, but we weren't answering them. And Luke just turned to the other guys and said, in just a talking voice, it sounded like, said, "I don't think they can hear us," but we heard everything just crystal clearly. So anyway, they had a little excursion there while Bobby and Bill and I cooked supper and unpacked our stuff and set up camp. So that was the first of our pictures. This is at Fort Davis State Park. Bobby had his 35mm camera out with a big zoom on. Never did see his pictures that I remember, but may still have them. He was taking the picture of the boys up the mountainside too. You get an idea of the our bikes. Bobby and Luke were on the 500 Silver Wing. Bill and Kevin were on 1100 Gold Wing, and Nathan and I were on a 1200 Gold Wing. And Bill was pulling a little two-wheel trailer that the guys out at the boys' ranch at the Methodist home had built, and made a little canvas cover to go over it, or a vinyl cover to cover it all up. Worked out pretty good, except it wasn't raccoon proof. This is a picture of Nathan inside our tent later that afternoon, or the next morning maybe. We were in a one-man pup tent. We're a little bit crowded. Here's a picture of our campsite. Motorcycles and Bill sitting at the table over there, relaxing. May have been drinking coffee after the breakfast we had. And there's Bobby in the forefront there. I didn't notice him until just now. We had a little problems with the raccoons the first night, and they wiped nearly all of our groceries out, except for what was locked inside of a ice chest or two. But they got all of our banana bread, or most of our banana bread, and our tortillas and things like that. So, different view there. Luke and Nathan and Kevin were throwing the football around, and got their picture. The boys are around the campfire helping with the wood and stuff, putting them to work. Another picture around the campfire. I must have been standing way up on a rock or something, because looking down at everybody. May have been on the table or something. This is Sunday morning, eating breakfast. I think we had pretty good breakfast, because all the breakfast food was locked up in the ice chest. So I think we probably had cereal or oatmeal and sausage and eggs or something. Boys look a little sleepy. This is a view from our campground looking back towards the entrance. Sort of dry. This was still middle of March, so it really hadn't greened up very much around there. But it was very pretty anyway. This view is looking back towards the east at the campground and the trees in the park, and there's a road that goes up over the top of that ridge in the distance there, and I believe from there you should be able to see the old Fort Davis and the town of Fort Davis. It's supposed to be very scenic up on top of that ridge. This is a view in the morning, Sunday morning, with the sun shining directly on the mountainside that the boys had climbed up the evening before. And you see what a different color it is. And they had climbed way up there before they reached a point they couldn't go up to the top. So a little different colors in the morning than in the afternoon around there. After breakfast, we loaded up, and I think we went back into Fort Davis maybe to get gas.